All right, everybody, how's it going? It's Ronan. It's another episode of the Brass Knuckles Bible Club. Today is actually a very special day. So I have a guest on today, and I consider him a good friend. He's actually the one that really kind of lit a fire under me to get the ball rolling on the Brass Knuckles Bible Club, and really in the other areas that it's pushing in towards. He is a firefighter. So he is a first responder, and he is out there helping save lives. And at the same time, he is spreading the gospel in a very unique way. This is Stephen, and he is the head of the Biblical Hitmen podcast. If you haven't already done so, episode 15 was where he invited me to come on to his show and to give my testimony. I think I was on like episode 60. I don't know. You've had like a million episodes since then. So anyway, I've been wanting for a long time to get Steven on the show, and, you know, I'm a cop, he's a firefighter, we work weird schedules, and so like it was constant hit and miss, and not to mention this guy is a complete animal whenever it comes to, booking guests. And if you haven't seen the Biblical Hitmen, you're really missing out. You need to go over to YouTube, Rumble, and I'm going to let him list off the whole litany of other platforms that the Biblical Hitmen is on. Because, like I said, he's the one that kind of lit the fire under me to start branching out the Brass Knuckles Bible Club to other platforms. But anyway, without further ado, this is Stephen. And Stephen, if you can do us all a favor, bud, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit about you, and we're going to go ahead and get into the episode.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's an opportunity, and I think there's just nothing better than, a police officer and a firefighter kind of getting into the Bible, getting into some interesting, conversations about the world and, what the future may look like and stuff. But yeah, my name's Stephen. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a Christian for 16, 17 years now, firefighter. And I do the podcast on the side, but I try to make it competitive amongst the circle and the other podcasts that are out there. So there's really about maybe 3 to 4 episodes that get dropped a week. People could check out the show on YouTube, The Biblical Hitman, and also audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, and social medias, things like that. So I'm going to try and spice up some new stuff this year with the show, try and create some cool content. So it'll be fun, and we're out here to try and share the gospel in whatever way we can. It's kind of like we're using the internet and this podcast as a tool to kind of get the gospel out there. Some people use baseball, some people use other tools out there, right, to try and in some sort of way bring a ministry to their lives. And so that's just kind of where I'm at, man. Found you along the way. God kind of brought us together, and we did a couple shows, going to be more shows in the future. And I'm excited to see, where we're at in 5-10 years with all this, see what God's got planned for us. And I'm here for the ride, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So it's, the other cool thing is, and in the light of all this, Scotty K fitness thing, I'm not going to completely dox ourselves, but obviously this is Brass Knuckles Bible Club. Everybody knows that we're based here in Florida, and that's pretty obvious. But we also found out that going to be living somewhat pretty close to each other, so we definitely need to get together. So anyway, listen, man, so like I was saying earlier before, you had a cool show at the beginning of last year, but this has exploded. Biblical Hitmen has exploded over the last year. You guys have really been putting in the work. What I wanted to ask you about is that, so when you look at the Christian YouTube, I guess, sphere, if that's what you want to call it, some people might kind of consider the title conspiracy theorist kind of like a slur. You know what I mean? Kind of like you're just like the tinfoil hat guy talking about crazy stuff. But no, like you zeroed in. There's a text that is central that I've noticed to a lot of the talking points and the guests that you have on the biblical hitmen, and that is Genesis 6. And Genesis 6 is one of those passages where, like, it's funny because, like, if you're a regular churchgoer or whatever, or you're in some sort of like men's group or small group or whatever, when you inevitably come across Genesis 6, most of the people in the room, they all just kind of just like fly right by it, right? But there's always like kind of like two guys, and that's probably guys like me and you that just kind of like just kind of stare at each other, you know what I mean? Like, all right. And we just kind of smirk as the Bible study rolls on, but you've really kind of zeroed in on this. And I guess the first question that I wanted to ask you is that, I could be completely wrong, but I'm assuming at some point, you know what I mean, in your walk with Christ, whenever you first came to Christ, at some point, like, you weren't always talking about powers and principalities and ancient enemies, okay? Somewhere along the line, something happened, right? So I guess my question is to you, especially whenever it comes to like Genesis 6, okay? The men of renown. When when did the Bible stop looking normal to you?
It had to be probably around like 2019 or something, maybe 2020. Hold on, let me think about this for a second. So like 2020, 2021. No, I'm sorry, 2021. I would say is when concepts that I've never explored before pertaining to Genesis 6 started to kind of come into the picture. But you have to understand what happened first before that is around like 2018. I had a UFO experience, and it was something that put me at the crossroads with my faith. And so I found that very impactful to my Christian walk. And so I thought about it a lot. I was like, God, praying through this period that I'm kind of like going through, where I'm like, I saw what I saw. I know what I saw. How does I make this make sense with the gospel? How do I make it make sense with the Bible? And I think that's what Satan does is he'll throw things at you that he knows that you're ignorant to biblically, and then it kind of like stirs you up. It may lead to some sort of confusion. It may lead you to some sort of other kind of teacher or whatever, right? Because there's a lot of false gospels that kind of get pushed out there. But anyways, I had to like make sense of this, and so I started researching. I started doing my homework, and I started looking into the subject of when the Bible talks about that these sons of God, right, took themselves wives and had children with them, and these children were giants, men of renown, the Nephilim, this idea of this Nephilim, and I'd say most of the church looks at that topic and they say, yeah, these are the sons of Cain, right? And I'm sorry. So these are the sons of Seth, right? So the sons of God are like the sons of Seth, and they intermingle with the sons of and the daughters of Cain. And God's really been always forbidding this idea, right? Like uh, stop mixing yourself with unbelievers. Stop mixing yourself with these other people that are pagans and have a whole other idea of religion. And really that bloodline is just an adversary against God, right? Everything within that bloodline of Cain is all an adversary against God. So I had to try and make sense of it. So I started, looking. I made it real simple. I said, if I was a dummy and I didn't have a computer and I didn't have internet and I had no one to rely on or any mentor to help break down what this should be interpreted as, I thought about myself as like, just a Jew back in the day, and really when the Old Testament was the only thing that was put together at the time. And if I was to read Genesis and then read the book of Job and see that the Bible is both saying the sons of God, it's also saying the same word in Hebrew, which is B'nai Elohim, which is, honestly a divine figure. It's a godly figure. And the Bible talks a lot about like little g gods and stuff. So
All right, so I gotta stop you real quick, Bubba. Just real quick. So just to kind of reemphasize to everybody else that watches it, it's not that we don't ignore Genesis 6 on Brass Knuckles Bible Club, although that's not the focus. Would you mind slowing down a little bit and kind of explaining to people what a Nephilim is? Like,
yeah. So a Nephilim would be, again, like sons of God, right? You have this, again, Elohim is used as either a singular or a plural. And in this case, when in Genesis 6, it's being used in a plural format. So and it means God, right? It's God or gods. So you have these gods that come down, or when you look at ancient cultures and histories and other writings that parallel with each other with this scene, they're talking about, heavenly beings coming here and intercessing with mankind. And so when you have this little g God, fallen angels, these divine heavenly beings coming and taking wives and having children with them, you have an abomination, and the Nephilim would be the offspring of that relationship between fallen angel and woman, right? And in the Bible, it talks a lot about giants, right? Before the flood, after the flood, people of men of God throughout the Bible have come into conflict with giants, trying to get to the Holy Land, right? So Goliath, right, was considered a giant, and it really stems back all the way to this bloodline, this bloodline of Cain, which if you get into Gary Wayne's book, he talks about how, this is where he thinks that these fallen angels chose the daughters of Cain and started this like hybrid race. And if you think about it, it's the most tactical thing you could do to try and destroy off another bloodline. And I think that bloodline that they were trying to do this to was, the bloodline of Seth, the bloodline that Christ was to come and be born through. You have to understand, like Satan and his fallen angels, it's very important to them, to try and not bring that Messiah into this world. But they can't stop that. It was too late. They tried to kill God, but it ended up putting, Satan in that checkmate position, right? Like, I didn't think with Christ's death, I don't think Satan thought there would be victory with the death of Christ.
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. So, so I wanna put a pin in it right there, and I want to kind of rewind a little bit. You said that you had a UFO encounter. What did you see?
So me and Jesse were in Las Vegas. It had to be probably around like 12 o'clock in the middle of the night. Not under the influence of anything. And we're going out to Calico Basin, which is just off the west side of Las Vegas. And we're out there. And now this is around the time where the Bob Lazar documentary started coming out. This is around the time that David Fravor was hitting the Joe Rogan show, talking about his Tic Tac, experience, right? And this is a naval fighter pilot talking about a UFO experience. This is when like things started coming out with whistleblowers, and so I'm just building up a whole scene for you, because this is the propaganda that was also going around like at this time, and a lot of people were feeding off it, either consciously or subconsciously. So, anyways, around that same exact time, we were watching that documentary. We were all amped up with this, UFO phenomenon, and we went out that way with the intent to try and see something. And so, what was very funny, I'm a Christian at this time too, right? But I'm being sucked in and seduced and being drawn into something that's very sensual and something that's very, you know, what I didn't know at the time was is evil, right? Like you're getting brought into a religion and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
So we go out there with the intent to see something, and we do. We end up seeing something, and it starts interacting with us. It's an orb. It's a white orb that's kind of turning on and off. It seems like it's making weird erratical movements, kind of like it did. Like it just is bouncing back and forth, not very fast, not like a vibrating motion, but it's moving around. We're talking to it. Then we start kind of antagonizing it a little bit.
How far away was it from you?
It was probably maybe only, I'd say like 600 feet, right? But when you're out in the mountains, like that's not far at all.
Yeah.
And it was at the top of a mountain. It was about 30 to 40 yards above the mountaintop. And so when we start antagonizing it, again, maybe 5 minutes go by. And
what are you doing to antagonize this thing?
Well, Jesse's howling out at it. I'm thinking about things of it. And that's the interesting thing is it reacted like it was alive and it knew what I was thinking and didn't like what Jesse was doing. So, and why I say that is because there was like this intensity of the orb. There was like this seriousness about the orb, right? It's kind of like if something's moving in front of you and it's got like a consistent pace to it, and then you say something and it just goes whoop, and it just like stops and it's like, what? And it like pays attention to you, like locks in.
Is this kind of reminiscent to, although it was obviously different and we were driving, but the video that I sent you?
Yeah, it could be something like that. Yeah. And I think there's something to these orbs and we can get into it. And, so I saw that. And by the way, the orb started descending down the mountain. It took a serious state to it. It made it know that it knew what we knew. And then when we knew that, it just started coming down the mountain elegantly. Not like it was trying to scare us, but it was just elegantly coming down the mountain. And so we booked it, we ran, we drove off. I'm looking behind us as we're driving off right through the window. And this thing is kind of still trailing, and then it just slowly, oh so gently, just fades out. And so I had to make sense of that, man, my Christian faith. And it led me to where I believe the Bible is talking about principalities, powers, and wickedness of things that we can't see. The Bible talks about Satan and Satan has an army, like when he's dealing with things, he's not doing it alone. Right. So the Bible says that, Lucifer masquerades like an angel of light, but so don't his ministers. So there is a team here that is, working against God, trying to build a world religion that is wrapped up in the UFO phenomenon and Gnosticism. And what's funny is when I started, digging through and started seeing God revealing things to me, where, okay, if Genesis 6 is talking about this, then we have something to really consider here with what kind of disclosure events were being fed. Something's happening here. And what I think is happening here is instead of this term Disclosure Day, that's, Steven Spielberg's got a movie trailer about UFOs that's coming out in June or July this year. It's called Disclosure Day. You've got the Senate talking about the same terminology, Disclosure Day, with Congress and all of this stuff. I want to give it a different name because I think it's called Enlightenment Day. Because at the end of all of this, I think there's something that these outside forces, or whatever you want to call it, maybe it's just all Satan, right? He's the prince, the power of the air. He can do many different miracles in this space. it's time to try and expose this stuff. There is a Gnostic UFO world religion that's coming, and people don't understand it. When I say Enlightenment Day, this is where I think Chris Bledsoe, Ryan Bledsoe, they're talking about in Easter this year that these orbs are going to bring a new knowledge to the world, right? Knowledge, there it is, enlightenment.
Yep.
There's the fruit. Who presented the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil?
Yeah, the serpent.
It was the serpent. So the fruit didn't just come to Eve. It was given to Eve. It was tempted by Eve, and that's what I think that these fallen entities are trying to do. They're trying to tempt us with the same idea: knowledge, enlightenment, ascension, whatever you want to call it.
So, yeah. So, all right. So, you very quickly found yourself in the bizarre and in the strange ever since that moment. When is that when the lights turned on, when it just kind of clicked? Not that Christianity wasn't real before, but when did Genesis 6, what you experienced in the desert, when did everything kind of come together and click where you were just like, this is it. Like this is for real. This is what reality is. And I guess the second half to that question is that when you have that moment, when you have that aha moment where you're staking your claim, where you're choosing a side, right? When you're putting a stake in the ground and saying, this is the truth, I stand on the truth of the gospel and nothing can make me budge from here. And not only am I not giving any ground, but now I'm going to start pushing the kingdom forward. It always comes with a bill. It's not free. The gospel is free. Salvation is free, right? But following Christ, it costs you. What does this cost you?
Honestly, I just don't even care anymore. I don't care what people think. I don't care about anything. I think what maybe people need to start doing is trying to, instead of taking the Bible and conforming it to our reality and our world and to what we know, I think we're doing something. There's an issue there. I think we need to read the Bible as it is and get the picture of how it's describing things, and even just the supernatural part of a lot of the Bible. I think we need to start submitting to. I think a lot of churches and a lot of Christians today, they'll read something out of the Bible and consider it to be allegory, or they'll consider it to sound too far-fetched that it's obviously something they're trying to represent something else, right? I think what Satan's done, and he's done a really good job
Trying to
of
make everything metaphorical.
Well, I just think he's trying to strip away the supernatural view of the Bible, right? I think that people are trying to put God in a box. I feel like, when the Bible talks about that there was a pillar of fire, right? There was a pillar of fire, right? This isn't like, don't misinterpret certain things. We're at battle with certain forces, and I think Satan is the god of the forces. And these forces have a lot to do with like occult practice, right? And the occult is able to do things like incredibly impressive to the supernatural view of things. Meaning, they can, someone can open up a grimoire book and then flip through it, which is basically a book of spells and all this stuff, get in contact with certain things, and coins can start to fall out of thin air. right? Like people have had some of these experiences. Like when Moses is, we have to understand this. Like God, uh, people that follow God throughout the Bible, there's a lot of supernatural things that these people do, but it's the power of God that does these things um, as he's using these people. Satan's on the flip side. He's like, with the occult, we can access the knowledge and we can do the same things that God does, right? And the best example of this, I think, is when Moses, I think it's in Exodus, and he's approaching Pharaoh and he's like, let my people go, and he throws his staff down on the ground and it turns into a snake. We know that was the power of God,
Right.
but Pharaoh had magi, two of them, forget their names, but they threw their staffs down as well, and through their power, right, their intent, their imagination, and their occult practice, they were able to do and replicate something that God did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible
to an obvious, much lesser degree, but yeah, nonetheless.
Yeah.
I mean,
and people in the church, I think God's in control of all of it. Like, I'm not saying any churches are doing anything wrong unless you're like an LGBTQ church somewhere and you're a part of that crew. It's pretty bad.
That's not a church.
But if you're like a conservative Christian, maybe a Baptist or something, and you believe Genesis 6 is like, the sons of Seth, then okay, fine. Whatever. It doesn't do anything to your salvation. It doesn't do anything to your walk with God. But I tell you what, I can answer way more questions about your curiosities that of psyops and deception that can be thrown in front of you, and you're put at the crossroads with some of these things to try and make an understanding of it, and you're drinking milk.
Yeah.
And when I'm getting into certain with Genesis 6, I think that's like digging and eating meat. Like, how are we going to explain some of the phenomenons that people have with Dogman, Bigfoot? I mean, listen, I'm not a Tennessee boy, but there's so many stories of people in that area or in the Appalachian area.
Listen, I'm kind of speaking out of pocket here. Typically, I wouldn't speak on other people's behalf, but she's gonna forgive me. Dogman, I didn't know that there was an actual name for it, but my wife saw it years and years and years ago whenever she was a little girl. So did her brother. So did her sister. So did her father. So you mean sister, brother, father all see the same thing? And he's a pastor. He's been a pastor for 30 years. He's been a Baptist minister for 30 years. And he immediately slammed the door, and started praying in Spanish and praying over the house, praying over the kids. Again, like I said, I didn't know there was a name for it, but he described this thing as a bipedal canine that stood upright, was as tall as a man, and looked completely vicious, and was outside of their cabin in Virginia, in the mountains of Virginia. So, like, this was long before you and I started talking. This is long before biblical hitmen. This is long. I mean, we're talking the 90s, right? And this is, I mean, she told me about this whenever we first got together. You know what I'm saying? Long before I was like a Christian. Like, well, I mean, I would say I was a cultural Christian, but I didn't really believe in the way that I believe now, and especially not with this whole dynamic of Genesis 6 and all this weird stuff. Like, there's like, if you actually read and you actually pay attention, you definitely know this, and you're very studious, and you definitely read a lot. And I appreciate that because I read. If you actually pay attention, there's some weird stuff in the Bible. So I 100% agree with you. Yeah, man. Like, because without Genesis 6, you look at something like that, and how are you supposed to make heads or tails of it? You know what I mean? Mass psychosis. I know these people.
I found, and this is the thing too, man. Like, I've had conversations with hundreds of people, and I've talked to researchers authors and a lot of people who have like dedicated, I mean, maybe, more than 10, 20 years to a lot of the things that they study. And there's a story my buddy, Bo Kennedy, his podcast, uh, it's called the Bump Podcast, but he had a lady on, and he's a in like Tennessee area guy.
Yep.
He's been on the confessionals many times, and he does a lot of supernatural phenomenon sightings, Bigfoot, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he had this lady on one time who lived in that Appalachian area, and she was butted up right against the forest, and she was in contact with a friendly Bigfoot that would message her, right? Not text message, but do messaging to her, telepathic, almost like
or something.
leave her gifts, right? Make things for her. So there was communication between the two, and there was a friendship, and she asked it what its name was, and it called itself Eliud or Elude or whatever. Bo Kennedy she didn't even know what she was saying. Bo heard it, and it didn't register with him right away. He actually took the term, wrote it down, and actually started contacting other people within our circle that have researched, the topic. And we came out with, that she was saying Eliud. And when Bo found that out, he contacted the lady, right? Got a hold of her and said, "Hey, was this the name that you said that this Bigfoot told you it was calling itself?" And she said, I mean, as soon as he said it, she just was like, yes, that's it. The funny, interesting thing about the word Eliud, right? If we go back to Genesis 6, the fallen angels come down, mate with human women, have children. Those children are called the Nephilim. Well, then the Nephilim had children as well, and those offspring were called the Eliud. And this comes out of the book of Enoch. Again, I don't believe Enoch is inspired scripture. I think how we have things right now, and especially with the King James Bible, again, it's just my opinion. We have God's word, and we have the boundaries. God's in control of the whole thing. It's the Bible is God, in my opinion, and you can't just manipulate and change whatever now there is, right? Like, we know that there's translations that have really crazy stuff in it, but listen, like, God's got it. All right. So anyways, what do you make of that? Right? You have a Bigfoot phenomenon that someone has a relationship with for months on end, and there's a trading system going on. There's a gift system going on. There's talking telepathically. And this Bigfoot is calling itself an Eliud, and it's seeking redemption, she said. She said he's seeking redemption. That's another interesting thing. So you have this is weird, and biblically it makes sense. If you're taking the idea of the book of Enoch, so you got to make something of that. And I think it's the spiritual, the metaphysical realm blipping in and out, right? In whatever it is trying to masquerade itself as. And if you look at a little bit more of the narrative in Enoch, these spirits that were, from the offspring of, the fallen angels, the Nephilim, and all this, they were casted and cursed to wander the earth. So Jesus has even said this, that, Jesus himself, even casted out devils, casted out legion. He dealt with these evil spirits. A lot of these evil spirits were like, your time isn't yet, right? So they almost like have this. They don't function on time like we do. They know what's going to happen in the future. They know what's happening. They just they don't function like us. But Jesus says that, when these spirits are casted out, they're casted out into dry places. And if you think of that idea, dry places, it's an area you don't want to be. No one, and there's thirst there. So like, there's like these areas where it's like very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they want to possess
about
bodies
this a number of times on my podcast. Yeah.
So anyways, I mean, that's something that's interesting to take.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. So my next question is that have you gotten any pushback spiritually since you started this whole thing?
I mean, honestly, what do you mean? In what way? Like people are calling me like a heathen or a hip or whatever.
Yeah, so we can start
stuff.
with the low hanging fruit. I'll tell you this. So one time, I forget what exactly it was. I said "holy crap" one time on one of my podcasts, and if you watch my stuff, like I don't curse, and it was a reaction. I was like, "Holy crap," you know what I mean? And dude, I got lit up. I got.
Yeah.
Like this guy was like, "Holy crap!" You know what I mean? Like I know what it is that you're trying to say, and this is not a Christian, And this guy was just like stoning me in the comments, and I was just like, "Dude, like, just take it easy, man. Like, dude, if you knew my mouth before I was saved, and I'm still being sanctified, like this is still a faith walk. I'm still in like an alpha male type." Job where you got all these big, strong dudes, and they got mouths that can make sailors blush. You know how cops are, firefighters, soldiers, all this stuff. So like, it's really rough dudes. And what's been kind of the, I guess you could say, interdenomination like challenges that you've faced since you've started this podcast. Is this normally like, have you kind of gotten it down to a group to where these are your core people and they just stick with whatever it is that you're saying? Or every now and then are you like watching people fighting in the comments about, doctrine and stuff like this and wanting to throw stones for the Genesis 6 and Nephilim and all this other stuff?
Honestly, I haven't really gotten any feedback about it because I think once they listen and once they pay attention to the conversation that's being thrown down, I don't think you can really have a super strong argument to push back against it. I think you would just sound stupid if you just came into the comments and you said Genesis 6 is the sons of Seth. To me, that's just you putting your opinion out there with nothing to back it up or to change my mind. If it's so important to you and you want to leave a comment and you want me to repent, then help me, right? Give me something to chew on here. When you look at, and again, I was going to make this point earlier in the show, right? Let's say we're a first century Jew and the New Testament has not been put together yet, and you're reading these stories. I think the believer back then is going to let the Bible interpret the Bible. And so if I was to read Genesis 6 saying the sons of God took themselves wives, had children with them, and those children were the Nephilim, which it means, like to fall, and it's got all of these, meanings to it to where you're like, yeah, this something serious happened here. I can go to Job and see that the same exact words in the same exact context are being used. And in Job, the sons of God are worshiping God, and Satan comes amongst them and has a conversation with God. And these are the angels, these are heavenly beings, right? If we look at Jude And Jude says clearly that if the these angels that left their first estate or habitation, or what the Greek calls it as the Okaterion, they shedded something. They left something and they came here. That clearly, and by the way, right after that, it says that these angels were locked up in darkness for their sins. And then right after that, it's talking and comparing that scenario and what happened there to Sodom and Gomorrah. And the fact that in Sodom and Gomorrah, in that story, you have men wanting to have sex with angels. There's something going on. The Bible's trying to tell you something and speak to you. And I think that what that this whole idea of fallen angels and mankind and the interbreeding, when we look at cultures, we have the same story. There's heavenly beings that came down to earth that gave man knowledge, right? We can see that even being played out in Genesis.
Right.
And if Genesis 6 is too hard to believe for angels to copulate with human women, this is going to probably piss a lot of other people off too, because this is something to consider as well. Is Genesis in the garden, Genesis 2 and 3, is it an allegory for something else? Some people say that there was a sexual sin that took place in the garden. There can be an argument for that. But, right, if hypothetically this happens, right, and this sexual sin did take place in the garden, then the fallen angels would follow in suit with their leader at some point in whatever other agenda they want to pursue later down in the timeline. If there's an idea that, the serpent mingled with Eve, you have a fallen angel mingling with a woman, right? I'm just throwing that out there. So it's not too far-fetched to think of the same thing in Genesis 6. But anyways, you've got all of these cultures talking about the same thing. You've got the Sumerians talking about the Ankalu, right? You've got the Anunnaki. You've got all star people, right? Space brothers, this ancient astronaut theory, or whatever it is, thrown into the mix. And when you look at the world, I think that it's not too hard to see it when you look at each of these nations, the stories that they're talking about, and giving them some sort of credit for believing it and thinking it was true. I mean, there's something to the story.
It's hard to believe that everybody else is just making up all these stories, and they know that they're making up all these stories, and they're all lying and know that they're lying, and we're the only ones that aren't. You know what I mean? And not to say that theirs is true, but why would they not? But like, for example, you know what I mean? If you were to propose the idea that the Nephilim, disguised themselves as these mythical heroes and these gods that you see in these other religions, like take Thor, for example. You know what I'm saying? So in that area of the world, if they have not received the gospel yet, okay, and these are just regular people, regular farmers going about their daily life, and they see this giant of a man touch down with awesome power and a hammer and lightning, and this guy he's can do all of these superhero like things, why would they not believe that?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that would be just as real to them as this is to us, only they don't exactly know what it is that they're looking at underneath, under the guise. And so that's one of the things that I really like about the Biblical Hitmen and y'all's show is you guys do a really, really good job of tying that element in, at least in a way that the commoner can understand it and kind of make sense of all these other world religions. and where the common thread is and where they all intersect and intertwine. Some of them are like way off and into the weeds, and we get that. But a lot of what you're talking, it's hard to ignore. Like, for example, it's really hard to ignore for the fact, and I really don't get into this very often, but I've been wanting to talk to you about this forever. I'm still fascinated with the fact that every single civilization on the planet, for all time, for all history, has some sort of lore on dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And that on its face sounds crazy.
And this is the thing about Bibles, and as time goes on, more interpretations come out because they want to take the Bible and adapt it to the environment that the culture is in. And what I mean by that is, 1,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, a dragon wouldn't have sounded too far-fetched because of, what people were thinking and what the culture was like back then. But where we're at today, no, we only see dragons on the Disney Channel. You know what I'm saying? Or that's our reality of dragons. So if that's our reality of dragons, then we need to synthesize the Bible down to adapt to how we view things today. Right? And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. Yeah. And just getting into that whole story, not only are they talking about demigods and heavenly beings coming down and making these demigods in all of these cultures, there's another thing, man. They're all talking about a flood. They're all talking about a flood.
All of them.
And you're talking about a judgment that is so catastrophic. It's such a reset, right? Something serious is going on in the earth, right? Something is seriously going on the surface of the earth. And it's so bad to a certain point that God had to pick one man and his family and their wives and put them on a boat and keep them alive to restart humanity over, from that point. And how the nature of humanity is, we all just fall right back into sin, all back into rebellion, right? And you had a very similar case with, Nimrod. And Nimrod's such a significant figure in the Bible that I think a lot of people just brush by. Because if you look at the playbook that Nimrod went through and used, then you're going to have a good idea of what Antichrist is to look like in the future. And I'm so sick of seeing all of these videos and all of these people leaving this stuff in the comments, where I'm not sick of it, but it's
what's going on in the comments, Steve?
No, it's not that, because I do understand with people, but when we talk about Antichrist, the Bible mentions it in the English version one time, and it's where there's this spirit of Antichrist. It's those that don't admit that Jesus Christ came in the flesh and he's God, right? So this is spirit of Antichrist. But I think that there is a man of sin. I think that there is a world ruler, and there is a returning Nimrod that's to come. I think when we look at Genesis 11 and we see Nimrod, he was a man, he was a warrior, and he was a hunter. And some scholars and some historians believe that what that there was also getting into is that he was a warrior, not only against godly people or people of God, but he was a warrior against God. He had an adversary, and that adversary was the God of the Bible. And so what we have right here is what I think is a great representation of a bunch of people and cities coming together and uniting under a Gnostic religion.
Well, he definitely has a foreshadowing Antichrist prototype about him, for sure, and especially the Tower of Babel, and just so. I wanted to ask you this, because this is a question that I've had and that I've personally, honestly struggled with whenever it comes to the whole Nephilim issue. So, if you could help me out and you could help the listeners out, and I'm not arguing it, I'm not shooting it down. I don't understand where. Okay, so if the Nephilim, if everything was wiped out in the flood, why do we see Goliath later on? Why are we still seeing giants?
Well, I think when I look at Jude, and again, this is like the second incursion theory, right? Like, how did giants reappear after the flood if God destroyed the giants in the first place, right? Like, how does this make sense? Well, when you look at Jude, and like I said earlier, where it talks about those angels that sinned, right? And they left their heavenly estate, right? Their habitation, and they came to earth and they sinned, and then they were thrown into darkness, and chained in darkness. Right after that, you've got the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And you got the story where it's saying, it's literally saying this, in like manner, so was Sodom and Gomorrah fornicating with strange flesh, and so on and so forth, right? I can't remember exactly how much the rest of it goes. So what's being said there, right? You have Lot and Abraham, and they're eating with angels, and the horde of people that are coming after them and trying to break into their home to fornicate with these people are trying to fornicate with the angels. And these were all ages of people, and children, women, and men.
Wild.
So why did God destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? And why was there not one that was righteous in that place? I'm thinking that this could be the time that the second incursion took place.
Can you spell that out? Like how?
You know what I'm saying?
How do we get there?
Well, what I'm saying is it's that is how we get there. You know, the angels look like us. Number one, I think they're amongst us each and every day. I think we're possibly living through like like the Men in Black movie. These things, again, not to the extent of like the ET, how they look or whatever, but the idea that there are things here living with us that look like us, that are not us, that I think the secular side of things are calling this like non-human intelligence or something.
Right.
But the Bible's pretty clear. Like, they have the same appearance as man. They have the same appearance. They have the same functions. They eat, right? I'm sure they go to the bathroom as well. So what I'm saying is I think that they're a part of humanity, but they're on strike too. Because people could go, well, why are they not just doing this now? Why are they not creating Nephilim now? I think that, you know, that could come into the future. I think we're already doing hybrids, you know, unethical experiments in underground scientific labs and all of this, through IVF and all kinds of other stuff. But, you know, when you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, it got judged. The world got judged in Genesis 6. And the world will be judged in Revelation, you know, with wrath. I'm talking about wrath, right? I think there's a difference between wrath and tribulation, but you kind of following me here? It's not, it's not, again, like, God's not writing this stuff out exactly word for word. But when I take what I'm reading in Jude, I can only say that it's possible angels were in Sodom and Gomorrah, and maybe this happened. I don't know exactly. There's a bunch of now some of the cultural myths, some of them, actually a lot of them, say that there were other survivors of the flood. You get what I'm saying? But I don't know.
Yeah, no, and I listen, I really appreciate that. And, you know, for everybody else that's listening and watching, that's something right there, what he just said, and probably not what he thinks he just said, but those 3 words that he just said let you know that you can trust him and you can trust his podcast. There's not a whole lot of people that can say, I don't know. I don't know. I think people get themselves into a lot of trouble when they stake 100% yes or no, especially in those kind of odd scriptures, those odd passages. And not that the Bible's lying. Nobody's insinuating that. But that God, he gives you what you need to know.
And I don't take away or add to his word.
Right.
And I try to use his word to refine and comb through the things that I'm going through.
Right. And so I really, really appreciate that. Really, I do. Because it's one thing to be very knowledgeable. It's one thing to be very learned, very well read. And there's some people, they walk around their heads like the size of Texas. You know what I mean? And you can't tell them any other way. And it's so funny because there's so many other areas besides Genesis 6 where people kind of fall into that pitfall of like, no, this is it 100%. And, within outside of the primary issues, right? The non-salvific issues, you got to get that right or none of this other stuff matters. But I'm talking about like the secondary and tertiary issues when you're talking about like the sign gifts and all this other stuff. People get at each other's throats and nobody seemingly has the ability, save like a few people that I've ever met that are just like, I don't know. So I really appreciate that. But, so, okay, I wanted to ask you this, okay? And this is where we're kind of getting into my past a little bit. Again, guys, if you haven't seen it, episode 15, Biblical Hitmen, that's where I give my testimony. Well, I talk about, my time in the New Age, my time in Freemasonry as a Master Mason, and, definitely I had a very, very, very strange relationship whenever it came to UFOs and aliens, right? You remember the stories. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch it. It's crazy. But so one of the things that I've never talked about before, one of the things that I used to do is because people used to say, well, what do you mean you were in the occult? Like, what does that mean? So like you were just part of a Freemason lodge or you just had crystals or do all this other stuff? No. For clarity, for the people in the Brass Knuckles Bible Club that don't know what the occult, you should know what the word occult means by now. But if you don't know what it means, it just means hidden, right? And the best place to hide is in plain sight, right? So you see all these acceptable things like prosperity gospel, New Age. I mean, they just opened a new church up into, if you could call it that. Their bylaws are insane. They accept everybody. They don't care if you're Satan. They don't care if you're Jesus or Buddha or whatever it is that you ascribe to. It's all about light and love, and everybody just, sing songs and hold hands and just march straight into hell together. You know what I mean? While they're copulating with strange flesh. So it's, but no, there were spells. And you mentioned, people being able to make coins appear, money spells. I've done that before. Not proud of it. I didn't do it right. Didn't work.
People have done it without even the intent to do it. It just is something that happened. Now, where I think that these entities or these spirits that are behind this are doing this to dangle the ball in front of you.
So, and that was part of the allure. And so I'm going to let you know about something that I did. Some are going to split hairs. They're going to say it's a spell. Other people is going to say it's alchemy. It's all the same nonsense. It's witchcraft. Okay. So There was a time when I was still a master mason. I was out of the military. I was back in the civilian life. I hadn't been hired on with the police department yet. I was still looking for a job, and at that time, like it was very dark. Uh, lot of distress going on. Lot of problems at home. 99.999%. It was 100%. It was 100% my fault and everything that was going on. I was the arbiter of my own destruction. And in effort to try to get my way out of that, I started looking more and more into these spells and the deception behind witchcraft, whatever your flavor is, whether it's just mainstream Wicca, green witchery, chaos magic, or whatever. Okay, whatever your flavor is, the trap, the pitfall is that once you start doing these things, okay, um, it's like you're making small transactions with a drug dealer, and most people don't realize that. They'll give you a little bit of a hit, right? Just enough to give you a little bit of a high, right? Because they know that you're going to start craving it, and then you're going to come back for more, and then you're going to come back for more with bigger spells. And when you come with the bigger spells, hey, listen, you got to pay up. There's a price. Sorry, ain't stuff for free. The sample pack was for free. That's to get you coming back to me. But you want a bag, that's going to cost you. It's going to cost you $20, right? So you get your spell, you appease whatever entity it is, and you don't even realize that you're like working for a demonic entity at that point, right? At this point, this was a, what do you call it? It was a familiar spirit. It's a jaguar spirit. And this is very strange. I know, this is very strange. Long time ago, before I was a Christian. But here's the weird part. I thought I was a Christian still. It's very hard to think that you're a Christian and that you're messing around with this kind of stuff. But it's to the rational, Holy Spirit indwelt mind, okay, this is extremely strange, right? But in cultural Christianity, this is like, yeah, a Christian mystic. Yeah, there's nothing weird about this. Well, I did find, I found out how to replicate mana. I found an alchemical process to replicate mana. And I would consume it with the thought and with the intent that it overall was going to be a net positive in my life, right? Marriages was going to be back on the up and up. I was going to find a job. I was going to start making money. All of these things that were promised to me. And here's the thing. It didn't fail. It didn't fail. I made something. And it did have supernatural properties. Here's the problem, though. It completely, and thank God, it completely backfired. Completely. From that moment on, when I started doing this, my life turned upside down. The amount of paranormal activity that I was going through was absolutely insane. I mean, you would think of like Paranormal Activity, like the movies, not the crazy third and fourth ones, but like the first one. Absolutely insane stuff. And so, like, whenever you're caught in this, you kind of think that, well, I just have to continue to bash my way through this and out of this with the same thing that's drawing these problems in. And one of the things that really started the uptick whenever I was doing it, and this is where I'm circling back around, is more UFO-like experiences. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know. I was ignorant to all this stuff in Genesis 6 and whatever. But I was attracting these things. Have you had anybody come on telling you about that? No, I'm actually able to call these things forth, and because I did it by accident.
I haven't had anyone on the show that has like claimed to be doing that. Again, I don't. I've had some occultists on the show, and again, I do this, or I did this to try and bring to the audience the perspective, the thoughts, and the ideas of what my enemy, our enemy, uh, is thinking of, or what's their agenda, what's the narrative, what can they do, how do they think, and what magic rituals do they do, what's the point of magic, what state of mind do you like to get into during meditation, why do you like to get into that, what's the experience like. And you know what, I get down at the bottom of all of it, dude. It is that these spirits and entities, whatever, right? We know that they're not of God, especially if they're involved in occult practice. But it's to give you a godlike experience and to give you gnosis and knowledge. And the narrative from a lot of these contactees, right, with either extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, whatever you want to call it, even the abduction phenomenon, a lot of the narrative from these entities, and it parallels with all kinds of different experiences, but it's that it's up to you to save humanity. It's up to you to change humanity. And it's up to you to like find it. It's like to find it in you, and you can elevate your consciousness, which is just a word for becoming God, in my opinion. And there's a Gnostic narrative behind it. And after all my research and conversations and all this, I am sold that the religion that was being evangelized to Adam and Eve in the garden, because number one, people be like, that's not what God's word says. I'd be like, that tree is the knowledge of good and evil. That tree is filled with a lot of things that God said not to deal with and not to go touch and not to get involved with. And there's something to it. And I think it was the Gnostic religion. I think that it was taken or influenced on to Cain, and Cain went out in his lineage, and this is how they worshipped things in the world. And they worshipped the fallen angels, and they worshipped Lucifer as the king of those fallen angels. When you get into the mythologies, there's always a king that's over the other gods. There's Zeus that's over Poseidon and all this other kind of stuff, right? And I'm really wondering how the world was just before the flood. Were these fallen angels still involved with humanity? Did they have power over nations? Was there an Atlantis that really existed? And the king of that, to me, in my opinion, is Satan, right? When you get the idea of who was king over Atlantis and Poseidon and all of that, you've got the trident, you've got a lot of symbolism, you got even just a lot of serpent symbolism with all of that. Anyways, I think what Satan was trying to do was build his kingdom here on earth. And I think that's the biggest part of his plan, is to build his kingdom here on earth. And he does that through occult practices. He uses his people to do things. It's kind of like how us Christians, we do things for God. We're in God's will, right? When we're in the Word and we're fasting and we're doing all the, and we're doing things, and we're led by the Lord. Well, it's the same thing, but just counterfeited on the other side, right? And they're pushing towards what I think they're trying to get people normalized with the occult. But connecting it back to Gnosticism, I think it's because they want to get people familiar that there's this universal force, there's this Sophia that is here to help us. And if we can manipulate it, we can, number one, be like gods, and number two, we can defeat the demiurge. We can make our way to heaven. You have to understand, this is the salvation view from the Gnostic. Okay, is that salvation is enlightenment. You have to climb the stairs according to Freemasonry. You got to climb the Kabbalah tree, right? Of Jewish mysticism. It's everywhere about you ascending to them. And when you look at all the emperors, you look at all the kings, they all called themselves God, right? Again, that's another typology of Antichrist, but it's because they were believing themselves that they were going through this apotheosis ritual where like there's this death and reincarnation process, which is nothing more than ancient Nimrod worship. And all these kings of the earth have always done this, where they believe when they die, they will go with the gods, right? And you'll be up in the stars, right? And anyways, I know I kind of connected a lot of things together there, but I think this is a big part of Satan's agenda. And I think that the church is lost and they're not in tune with what's going on. If anything, I think the church is being built in such a way, it's being led in such a way to where it's being led off the cliff. It's being, taken into the fire. And people would probably go, no, this is the biggest revival moment of all of history. What are you talking about? Sure. But what kind of Christianity are we getting into? The charismatic movement that's pushing a 7 mountain mandate that's nothing but New Agers, and they're actually talking about a Gnostic gospel. They're talking about that there's a power in you, right? That
I'm glad I'm not the only one that's been railing against the NAR here.
Well, no, because it's very, very important right now, because Paula White is involved with the NAR movement. Paula White is a part of the administration and the faith division of the United States, like, presidency right now. You've got the 7 Mountain Man. You've got this political religious movement, which Nimrod did as well. Okay. And again, some people could probably they're going to bash me like, oh, you're one of those guys. Well, I think Trump is showing a lot of typologies of something that we should be concerned with. Number one, he just put and created the Board of Peace. He's going to release who those members are in the near future. But when you look at the symbolism of this Board of Peace, I find it very interesting. And before I get into this, Trump in his Trump Tower off 666 Avenue is on the top ceiling of his penthouse on the top floor. He has a mural of Apollo. Okay. I find that very symbolic. The fact that he just created the Board of Peace, and this is like a peace treaty organization, and the symbolism for the Board of Peace is the United States, the earth, and then a Roman victory crown that is going around the emblem. When I look at the seal in Revelation, and again, this is how I do things. I just try to dig. I'm trying to dig, and I'm trying to investigate and figure things out, and then make it make sense. When I look at the seal in Revelation, it says it's a rider on a white horse with a bow and a crown, conquering and to conquer. So we've got Trump conquering and to conquering right now. He's got a tremendous amount of power. He's got the utmost respect of all the leaders of the world. He's probably, I don't know, maybe even got the most GDP out of anything, which technically he does. He's the president of the United States. But it says there that that the rider's wearing a crown. And that crown, when you get into it and you look at the Greek word of it, I don't remember exactly what the Greek word is, but it means a wreath. I think when John is writing it, and what he means when he's saying it, is he's comparing it to the Roman Empire. And he's not directly, but he's just telling you, when I'm saying crown, it's like what the Emperor of Rome wears. It's the wreath, and it means victory, right? It means you've won, you've conquered. So I don't know. There's a lot of weird things like with that. And then another weird thing is that he has a bow. I'm doing a pretty big research project right now, trying to justify that Marduk of ancient Babylon is Satan, but imitated as God. people get completely lost when I say this, because I've really found how deceitful the devil really can be. It's like a psyop within a psyop. Which, when I mean he wants to, what I mean by is that I think Satan and the Babylonians created a religion, merged it with politics, very similar to what we see now, and it looked like the truth from what me and you consider the truth.
Yeah.
So when I think of that, I think of the Christianity where it's at now, the great falling away, right? Then the man of sin will be revealed. Like, the church has to fall away. They have to believe something that is not the truth, because of the love of the truth is not in them.
Right.
And so I have this theory that, when the Antichrist is to come, man of sin is to come, he's to come as the Christ. Like, he's to come very similar, if not almost, in my opinion, like identical to Jesus. It's just he's got a different religion. It's Gnostic, but it's not advertised as Gnostic. Like, the Antichrist will have a Gnostic religion, obviously, because he's going to have an adversary. That's going to be God. Yeah, because people have to look at this. There's going to be a battle at the end of time. There is the battle of Armageddon, right? This is like the standoff between good and evil, the last one ever. And when Antichrist comes, I think he's going to come with also a religious narrative that points to an adversary, and he's to go to war with him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. The way I've understood it, and it just kind of at like a basic level, is that, and this is, I might be wrong. I've heard many theories, but what I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be a fusion of Gnosticism, Theosophy, like UFO type of religion, if there's any sort of like extraterrestrial contact, merging with AI. I mean, that's just like the just absolute cluster cabal that I see this realistically becoming. And I honestly think that it is going to be one for one, point for point, completely diametrically opposed to the principles of Orthodox Christianity and the biblical principles of Christianity. And I think because of that, essentially everyone outside of Christianity, I mean, I think that this is going to really cater to what you see is like the mainstream radical left, the Alphabet Army, Islam, all these other, protected groups and facets. I think with the emergence of AI, with the emergence of these theosophical contents, which, by the way, I haven't spoken on this in a bit. So for those in the Brass Knuckles Bible Club, theosophy is basically, it's just a hodgepodge of Christianity, Buddhism, spiritualism, Hinduism, Islam. You take little pieces that you like from here and there, and you let everything else go.
I think like all theosophy is in Genesis with Nimrod, the Tower of Babel, when it says that the people became one. Right. And with this, anything that they imagined to do, they were going to be able to do.
Right.
And that's theosophy, right? I think we're seeing Babylon being developed. I think the religion of Babylon has a fraction of it that hasn't come yet. And I think that has something to do with like this UFO stuff.
Right.
I think with all of that, when you have the conversation of humanity coming into some sort of disclosure with this whole thing, it's constantly talked about that this is what's going to unite humanity, right? And in my opinion, Satan unites and he balances. And
he's a unifier.
Yeah. Oh, he unites, and he whenever you hear those concepts, unite and balance, it screams Lucifer. But
Yeah.
a lot of people are trying to look at those things as like, we need that. We need a balancing in the world because there's too
Yeah.
much war. We need a balancing of this and that. We need to be united because we're stronger together. You can see it through the riots and all this kind of stuff that they're talking about right now. It's when the UFO phenomenon is going to come into this. You know, there's guys like Chris Bledsoe that talk about that he was given a vision from the lady, right? And I think the lady has a huge thing to do with
Sophia.
absolutely the lady, Sophia, Hathor, whatever, Isis, Frigga, whatever you want, the divine feminine, right? And this goes back, dude, all the way back to Nimrod, because Nimrod had, again, Satan has developed this false trinity. Like I said before, he's trying to imitate. So he's going to have a trinity. There's going to be some sort of three parts as one with this with this whole idea of Babylon, man. And in Babylon, you had Nimrod, you had Semiramis, and you had Tammuz. You had the Father, the Mother, and the Son. And what I think is coming, right? If we're taking this idea of the man of sin, I think the man of sin is the child. The Father is the one that sent him, right? Again, Satan's going to try and counterfeit Christ, right? Jesus and the Father, him and the Father were one, right? So I think he's going to point out to that, which in the Gnostic theology, that would be the monad, that would be the abraxas, so on and so forth. But then I think that where he's going to get his power from is from this divine feminine. I think the divine feminine is going to be involved in this way, not being represented as a woman, dressed in scarlet and all of this, but symbolically, I think it's going to mean a force. When you think of the man of sin, like he does miracles, he's got powers, he's doing all these things. Even the false prophet, right, is performing miracles. Well, how are they doing this? We were talking about it earlier. The occult. They're manipulating the force, the dark matter, the ether, right? The alchemists have been trying to figure out this stuff for ages, and I think he's going to use that power. He's going to know how to manipulate it.
He's going to find a way to tap in.
Yeah, it's like Dragon Ball Z, dude, where they're normal people, but then all of a sudden they could like form just balls of light in their hand and create it out of this energy. Because that's what Sophia is kind of being pushed as. Sophia is being pushed as like this comforter, this redeemer, trying to help mankind, trying to also give knowledge. And I think this is a big part of it. And the divine feminine stuff is everywhere, and it's super saturated with the UFO idea.
Well, I think that whenever you're done with your project, I don't know if I'm going to be done before you or not. I don't know. You got a lot of stuff going on. So do I. But, I think what I'm working on will accent what you're working on very well. And I think what I'm working on might actually precede what you're working on. You're drawing a lot of these parallels to Rome and Caesar and this administration. And so, guys, if you haven't already done so, whether you watch Biblical Hitmen or Brass Knuckles Bible Club, I'm coming out with a special here soon. It's called The God of the Riot, where I am going to make the case that I believe in a Roman Greek god that are potentially fueling these riots.
Ares.
A power, a principality. No, not Ares, believe it or not.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that they released that movie Tron, right? Ares,
and so,
jeez.
I am going to make the case that the god behind toxic feminism that is fueling the alphabet movement, as well as these riots and the upheaval that you're seeing, I am going to try to make the case that this is the Roman god Bacchus, or in the Greek Dionysus.
You know what's interesting, man, because we people might get lost because they when I say Sophia, they think of this is a woman.
Sophia the First from Disney Channel.
Right. Here's the thing. I think it's Lucifer. At the end of all of this, I think it's Lucifer.
Oh, 100%.
He's the god of the forces. He's the prince of the power of the air. And the Bible also makes a direct correlation to Lucifer, and it calls Lucifer the son of the morning. And that star that is the son of the morning is Venus, and Venus is a Roman female goddess. And so I think it's in Isaiah that says that, and they're telling you a characteristic of Satan. There's a duality to Satan. He might be he was created, in my opinion, in the image of God. He's male, but he's carrying this feminine aspect of him, right? And I think we can see that with the Statue of Liberty. I think we can see that with, obviously, the mystery schools and how they believe in a duality. And so again, there's something to that too, that obviously a lot of this stuff is not so black and white, but it's more of having conversations and making conclusions. But I thought that was interesting, man. I think the divine feminine has a strong connection to Lucifer directly. And if I could just say one more thing, just to make another connection to what I mean by the Antichrist using this divine feminine. Why does he need the divine feminine, Sophia, whatever? When I say Sophia or the divine feminine, they're trying to like localize it to a specific entity or a god or whatever. But what Nikola Tesla was even working on, right? And this is a guy who was using universal energy to create electricity in ways that we can't really replicate it today. He was an occultist. He was a divine feminist. He believed in what was called the queen bee. And he believed that society should be constructed in such a way where feminism should be on the uprise, which we see today, and that society and the structure of it should be developed like the hive, like a queen, like a colony of bees. And, Satan wants that, right? Satan wants to be like God, and he wants you to be connected to him. And I think once you like take that mark of the beast or whatever, you give your allegiance over and you worship him, that there is no more salvation for you, and that you've become connected to this hive mind system where I believe you no longer will have the agency of your consciousness. You
Right.
might be fighting within yourself, trying to like make decisions, but you're connected to some sort of transhumanism technology that you've become connected to him. And I can only encourage people out there to get connected with Jesus Christ. And if you have questions, doubts, or you're struggling with your faith, or maybe you're right in between, kind of like how I was, there's a lot of propaganda going around that's trying to pull you away from Christ. And the thing that I can say with people is that the Bible has the answers for all of this. Like it really does, right? And some answers might be short. Some answers may leave you with some questions, but you get an understanding of the generality of what you're looking for. It's all there, man. It's all there. And with the times that we're living in, it's weird. I always look at Revelation chapter 12. And it says, and some people are like, oh, this happened in the beginning, or this happened. They don't know what. I think it hasn't happened yet. But there's a great war in heaven, and Satan and his fallen angels are casted to the earth. And with the propaganda where it's at right now, I think they are coming, and I don't think these things are trustworthy that are, if we can't define it right away, I think it's deception. So cleave to Christ and come to Jesus, because he's the only one that can save you. He's the only one that can set you free.
Amen to that. Well, guys, hey, listen, This is my buddy Steven. Been wanting to get him on forever. So hey, just one last time in case they're coming in late. Let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, man. So for the video side of things, we're on YouTube, The Biblical Hitmen. That's MEN. You can come check out this channel there. If you want to support the show, just be sure to subscribe and also follow and check the show out on all audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, or Spotify. But brother, thank you, man. This was fun. Again, like I don't get to talk too much on my show, or maybe give some of the insight like I want
You're
to.
a wealth of knowledge. I mean, we could go and go, we could go and go and go, but this would be like a 4-hour podcast.
Yeah,
you know?
No, but thank you, man. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to do it again with you soon, and working with you more often.
Absolutely. And hey, man, listen, from now in the future, you got some stuff you need to air out. Absolutely. Well, I'll get
You're
you
my
on
bug out buddy. You're like, you're my bug out buddy. Okay?
Well, we're going to be right down the road. But yeah, man, I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge, and like I said, you definitely you bring a very unique dynamic, to furthering the kingdom here. And like I said, although we don't ignore Genesis 6, that just isn't what primarily the Brass Knuckles Bible Club is. So it's very, very special that we get to have you on. It's very interesting. This stuff is very, very interesting. It's very easy to get sucked into a 2, 3, 4 hour podcast. But anyway, for you guys that are haven't watched them, you need to go and you need to check them out. If you haven't already done so, make sure you leave a good review, right? 5 stars. We're going for 5 stars, trying to get back into the algorithm. Like, comment, share, subscribe. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, and thanks to my buddy Steve here, we're on audio platforms now. We're on Spotify, Spreaker, Deezer, Podchaser. We're on, what's the other one? Podcast Addict, and going to be working on getting on Apple Podcast here soon. We're starting to do lives now, starting to cover current events now. And if you haven't already done so, I'm telling you guys, okay, sit and wait for this next special, The God of the Riot. You won't be disappointed. We're going to be going over some really, really groundbreaking stuff. I appreciate you, Steven. Thanks for coming on, buddy. And hey, thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, man. Nothing but love here, man. And
all right.
As always, man, be safe at work, and God bless you, buddy.
All right. Y'all have a good one.